Hello, fellow fans of the pony kind! This is Mage speaking, and I welcome you to the first official episode of Mage Page! Before we start, I'd like to say something. I tried to look up many opinions on the episodes, but I was never met with any extremes. Everything I looked at was more or less the same thing, some providing more detail than others, but overall opinion could be summed up in it was okay. So, because of the lack of contrast, I will just talk about my first impressions of the episodes when I first saw them, and then I'll go into more detail about the overall, as well as my current opinion. Now then, Friendship is Magic 1 and 2 were actually not the first episodes I saw. They were, however, my second and third. So I watched the two episodes knowing barely anything about the show. And honestly, I quite loved them. Unlike many reviewers out there, when I watch an episode, I prefer to develop a generalized overall opinion about the episode, rather than analyze it in more detail and then form my opinion based on what I have discovered. My opinion comes from the emotion I feel after I see the episode, and the both episodes made me feel quite excited about the show. I couldn't wait for more. Now, why? Why did I like it? That's a tough question, because my current opinion is different from the one I had then, but I'll try to do my best and recapture the whimsy. What stuck out to me the most as I watched the first part was the way they introduced Pinky. It was so unexpected to me, and quite the surprise that they'd use this sort of cartoony humor in this type of show. It may not seem like much, but that gasp alone got me adjusting my seat and waiting for more. I'm a big fan of unexpected but well-placed randomness, and Pinky quickly grew on me, despite being a completely pink pony. Just a side note, I'm usually not a fan of pink. I'll explain why in later videos, but for now, let's move on. The whole story of these two episodes seem quite epic and very anime-esque. One main girl meets several other girls which later turn out to be connected to her in some magical bond that they later use to vanquish a great evil. It really reminded me of a Mahou Shoujo, aka magical girl anime. I've always had a weakness for magical girl shows, a guilty pleasure if you wish, and MLP seemed not just like an ordinary Mahou Shoujo show, it gave quite the new twist to the trope. At the end of episode 2, I was sure that the main 6 will now have to go on some grand adventures and use their elements of harmony each episode to overcome the presented issue. Imagine my surprise when the show turned completely the other way than I expected it to. Naturally, I did not only not mind it being different than I had imagined it to become, actually I'm happy that they did what they did. What MLP is now is something much more unique and deeper than what I expected from it. In short, yes, my very first impression of the two episodes was nothing but positive. However, I did rewatch the episodes after watching all 3 seasons, and as mentioned before, my opinion has changed on it. I was no more critical to the episodes. I kept my eyes and ears open for inconsistencies and errors, as my optimistic view of the show has been long tainted by the very thorough thoughts by other popular reviewers of the episodes. So now it's time to take off the pink tin goggles and take a closer look at the episodes, flaws and all. I'm sure all of you already heard about the quality of the animation. The overall opinion is, well, it's quite good for Flash, but they did a lot better in the following seasons, and it's justified because this is a pilot episode after all. And it's something I can understand and partly agree with. Really, the quality of the animation and backgrounds is absolutely beautiful, and like nothing I've seen in Flash cartoons prior. Although the quality of the show has indeed been improving since, leaving the pilot episodes in the dust, for what they were and are, they still stand their ground as beautifully made episodes with lots of different locations. There are worse looking episodes in the show. I'll get to those when I do, don't worry. We get introduced to all of the main 6 in these 2 episodes as well as their most prevalent traits and intended personality strengths. I say intended because as the show goes, some of the characters end up acting a bit differently than you'd expect them to after just watching this 2-parter. And that is not bad. Character development is a good thing. You've done well, that is. Which I regret to say isn't the case for some of the ponies, but we'll leave that for another day. Back to the episodes. The introduction of the characters was as good as they could make it with the time frame they've been given. I like how not everything about the characters is thrown at your face. They took the time to give it a few more subtle moments, like how the whole Apple family was so excited about meeting Twilight and wanting her to stay for brunch despite her being a complete stranger. It really painted Ponyville as a friendly, accepting place, and the fact that Twilight gave in and stayed with them showed a certain side of her personality we've yet to see at that point as well. From what we've been given so far, we could determine that Twilight wasn't the friendliest of ponies, and dare I say a bit insensitive. If she truly was like that though, she could have easily said sorry and left all the disappointed ponies so she could go back to her duties. However, that was not the case. Twilight stayed behind. She acknowledged the genuine kindness and acceptance of the Apple family, and the sad looks on their faces must have given her quite the guilt trip, judging from the face she made just before she said fine. I also like how they went back to Pinkie and let her explain why she reacted the way she did. Honestly, wouldn't have minded if they had just let her do the gasp and never explain it. I know a lot of people would have taken issue with that, but I would have found it hilarious. However, they do let Pinkie explain it, and they do it quite effectively. This is actually one of those times when we get to see how Pinkie's mind works. In future episodes, when Pinkie does something, all we get is, Pinkie's just being Pinkie, a shrug, and we move on. But this time we see an understandable train of thought that Pinkie's mind followed. It doesn't ruin the joke, and we're treated to a rare moment of clarity in Pinkie's actions. Now, story-wise, these two episodes are like Swiss cheese, and by that I mean they're full of holes. Some smaller, some bigger, but it seems that everyone agrees that the story was not well executed. For instance, Celestia banishes Luna permanently to the moon. The only reason Luna returns is because in 1,000 years, the stars aligned in a specific way to aid her in her escape. Celestia did nothing to battle her sister and only appeared after Luna was defeated. And she seemed pretty cool with making up with her little sister and letting her back in Equestria. Celestia's actions and reasoning have left many fans baffled. Luna herself left many unanswered questions in her wake. The two episodes feed us so much information already, it's kind of sad that they didn't manage to tie up all the loose knots, or at least the most glaring ones. The biggest offender of story holes is part 2, where the characters have to demonstrate their elements. For the most part, they felt very ungenuine and a tad forced. Most people like to bag on how silly Applejack's honesty is portrayed. What was she supposed to do? Lie to Twilight? Or, she could have just told Twilight that the two Pegasi will catch her instead of insisting on being trusted. Are the two most noted complaints, which are understandable. There was really no reason for AG to act the way she did other than forcing her element into the situation. Rarity's gesture is also not very well thought through. She gives her tail away before stating that she'll grow it back. The mustache would as well, and the least she could have done was make the color or shape match the other side. Frankly, I think the mustache looked a lot worse with the tail than before. I suppose it's a bit less forced than AG's, but still silly and unnecessary. I haven't heard much complaints about Pinkie's way of expressing her element, more about the situation in which she had to express it, but we'll get to that in a moment. With Rainbow Dash, I can't even call it loyalty. I mean, sure, she chose her friends over some team, but just think for a second. Rainbow Dash wants to join the Wonderbolts. They are the fastest and most known flyers in all of Equestria. Everyone knows who they are. The ponies call themselves the Shadow Bolts, and even if they say they're awesome, doesn't mean they are. They actually state they are the greatest aerial team in the Everfree Forest. Everfree Forest. The place where, 0 ponies live in? That ain't much of an achievement, you know. Dash gets praised a lot, so that's one way to get into RD's good graces. But even Rainbow Dash isn't so narrow-sighted as to pick a bunch of no ponies over her friends in time of need. What's the point of being in a team if the whole world will have to endure eternal night, right? Lastly is Fluttershy, and dare I say that hers is the most natural expression of her element? As we later learn, Fluttershy has an amazing gift for communicating with animals on a higher level than most ponies. She's an animal caretaker, and even giant bears don't frighten her away, so it felt quite natural that she tried to soothe the Manticore just like she would any other animal. When I mentioned Pinkie, I said it's not so much the way Pinkie expressed her element, but more about the situation in which she had to express it. And the situation was a bunch of scary trees. Now what was the problem? They were arguably harmless. Why is that a problem? Every situation in which one of the 5 had to prove themselves as a bearer of their element was caused by the magic of Nightmare Moon, all of which were very indirect and hardly threatening. The only attempt that was really life-threatening was the cliff crumbling at the beginning, after which we get the small silly things like a thorn in the paw or a poorly cut mustache. You'd think the Princess of the Night would put up more of a fight, summon minions, make the main 6 fight their way through. They couldn't defeat one Manticore, surely a small army of ponies would suffice to stop them. And we do see her summoning ponies in Dash's trial, and we know her magic can inflict damage. Cutting off that thick lock of hair in one go would take some serious force and sharpness. There is literally no good valid excuse mentioned in the show why the princess did not fight them head on before they reached the elements. Now you know the current general opinion about the two-parter. In short, it is not as good, probably hasn't taken any places in someone's top 10 favorite episode lists. But a lot of people excuse it because it's a pilot episode. Why? No, not just because they're the first 2 episodes and they were still unsure of how to go about it, but because they were pilot episodes. A pilot episode is an episode made to impress people and sell the show to a channel. Its main purpose is to look good and interesting enough to make people want to invest in it. All the animators and writers had were these 2 episodes, and they had to make them count. They had to cram in a lot of information in them, as well as start an impressive story which needed to be resolved at the end of the second part. What they did was really hard to do, and people who realize this tend to cut the show some slack. I mentioned how Friendship is Magic reminds me of a Mahou shoujo, and I gave my reasons why. That had they taken the pacing of one, I doubt that it would have been greenlit, let alone gotten to where it is today. In those sort of shows, the first episode usually establishes the universe and the main character, while the next 2 or 4 episodes let the protagonists meet the remaining cast and let them be revealed as the rest of the destined ones. Friendship is Magic had to take those 5 or so episodes and cram them into 2. Not only that, they also had to do much more explaining because this is a world of talking ponies with their own habits, history, and lore, rather than a world like our own where most things are self-explanatory. So, although the 2-parter is quite flawed and usually forgotten among list of best episodes, these 2 did a really good job at being what they needed to be, and I'm sure that although not many will say that these are their favorite episodes, I'm positive they take a special place in every brony's heart. Theory time! At the end of each review, I will present little theories that are based on what was happening in the episode, or an explanation for something that wasn't quite clear. They hold no proof though, and it's just something I decided to throw in just for fun. So, a lot of people complained that Celestia should have just told Twilight the situation and about the elements. I have a theory why she didn't. As we later on discovered, Twilight is a bit of a teacher's pet. She loves following her orders to the T, were Celestia to say, "You must make friends because together you will become elements of harmony, the only weapon capable of stopping Nightmare Moon." Twilight would have tried super hard to force herself upon probably every pony in Ponyville. That would not be a genuine bond. If she made any friends, it's not because she trusted them or cared for them, it would be because she was ordered to. Right now, although rushed, her bond with the remaining 5 formed naturally, showing that they all have honest chemistry as friends, and they all genuinely care for her. Celestia probably knew that the elements would not awaken in any other way, thus she had to do what she did. That's all for the episode, but hold on for a moment longer. If you have any opinions you'd like to express about any other episodes, feel free to leave them in the comments or message me. If your opinion is something very different from what I find in my research and has valid points, I'll mention it and credit you in my videos for it. However, if you end up hearing something similar to your opinion on my next video, but I didn't mention your name, please don't think I'm ripping you off. There are many pony fans out there, and a lot of them probably share your opinion. I'll only pick out something that I haven't really seen or heard anywhere before, and that has made at least one strong, valid point. If you're better with coming up with theories, there's a place for you too. Same deal applies to the theory section of my video. However, I have a limit of only 1 or 2 theories per video, so I'll only pick out the most believable ones. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Mage out.